Thank you so much for coming over, everyone. My name is Anas, and I'm a Google developer expert for Angular. You can follow me on Twitter at Anas Firdousi, but I'm warning you, it's mostly nonsense, but so is all of Twitter. So today I want to talk to you about a paradigm that has gained a lot of hype in recent years called progressive web apps. I'm so excited that I finally completed preparing for this talk, and I would like to dedicate this talk to my 6-month-old son and my wonderful wife, without whom this talk would have been completed 2 months ago. But I love them. So starting off, by the way, we're probably going to run over time because I've never coded with a screen behind me, so I was expecting something here. Anyways. Okay, so you may have heard of the phrase, web is the new native. Actually, progressive web is the new native. And it's probably useful to remind ourselves what a progressive web app is and what makes a PWA a PWA. So progressive web app takes a traditional web application and make it behave like a native mobile app. So in this talk, we'll take a Angular 5 application scaffolded with Angular CLI, and we'll try to make it 100% compliant with PWA specs. But before that, let's have a quick look at what characteristics a PWA takes from a mobile app and what characteristics it takes from a traditional web app. So how does a PWA behave like a mobile app? Offline support. So apps installed on your mobile phones are available to you when you're not connected to the internet, right? Like apps that you can install on your phone. If you're not connected to the network, you might have a degraded version of the app where you can actually not do a lot of stuff, but still it's kind of useful, right? But websites, on the other hand, are not so much useful when they're offline. So progressive web apps tell you what if there is a web page which just runs in your browser but still works when you're offline. So it gives you some sort of data to play with even when you have no internet connection. The next thing is PWA makes web apps installable. So native apps are natively installable, right? But now on the web, many of you might have seen something like this. This is called install banner on Firefox and Safari and others. It's called install banner. You click on the call to action, and then you get an icon on the home page. You click on the icon, you get a splash screen. Yes, a splash screen for web apps. So it kind of looks like a mobile app, but still is a completely traditional web app. The next thing PWA gives is notifications. So we all have had these beautiful notifications irritating us all throughout our day with mobile apps, but now you can irritate your users more by sending these notifications with web apps. And PWA can help you with that as well. And you can do notifications on mobile phone as well as desktops. Last but not the least, so PWA advocates the idea of a single responsive application using a good amount of viewport real estate. So it actually says you don't have to do a separate mobile application, a native application, nor you have to do a mobile web. You can use the same application and make it behave amazing on different landscape and portrait sizes. If you are a mobile developer since forever, I know this is painful, but we don't need to like native apps. Alrighty, so these are the 4 things that it takes from a traditional native mobile application, right? And there are other things as well, but these are like kind of the bare minimum. Next, let's see what a PWA takes from a traditional web application. So technically, PWA is just a fancy word, putting everything we already knew, like responsive and touchable, all of them together, and just call it PWA. So it's basically a simple web app. The client talks to the server, but then the bare minimum is you need to have a service worker in between. So Serviceworker is just a JavaScript file. It has the ability to intercept any outgoing HTTP request. So it's very powerful. Every HTTP request that falls in the scope of Serviceworker, I'm not going to go into the details of what the scope of a Serviceworker is, but any HTTP request that goes out of a page can actually be intercepted by Serviceworker, and then you can do a bunch of stuff like asking it not to go to the server actually, and then like picking up a file from cache and then just serving it, so that makes it more faster. So this gives the developer a lot of control over how the browser should respond to each request. Alrighty, and The next thing was, yes, so every traditional web application is shareable through a link, right? Mobile apps do not have a link to share. So this is what it takes from progressiveness of a web application. So these are like some of the bare minimum characteristics it takes from mobile as well as web, and then it works amazing. Alrighty, so now I'm going to start off by going over the current PWA development experience and some of the key building blocks. Again, as I said, service workers. So you have to write a service worker to begin with. Although a service worker is just a JavaScript file, they're slightly different from your standard JavaScript file. So it actually does the following. It runs in its own global script context. It's not tied to a particular web page, but it's actually tied to your domain. So let's say if you have a service worker for a local host, it's tied to that. If you have a different domain, it actually ties to that. For example, Angular.io, when you go there, they have a service worker. So whenever you go to Angular.io for the very first time, it registers a service worker in your browser. So it runs in a worker context in a different thread from the main thread, which is also very important to know, so that it actually does not like hold your application. It runs in a completely different thread from your main application. And it has no DOM access. That's another thing you should be knowing about service workers. And lastly, it runs over HTTP. So what happens is you register the service worker, you download it, install it, and then activate it. So this is actually the current process. And to do all of this, you have to write a lot of code. First, you have to check if the browser supports service worker or not. And then you have to actually go and listen to each of these events which are being fired from the browser and then handle them on your own. And then, files you have to cache and things of that nature. And then, so every request that goes out is actually intercepted through this fetch event handler. And then you have to do a lot of code for notifications, all of that, right? But you are Angular developer, right? So here's the magic. So you just throw the ng-config file plus a manifest file to Angular, and then it creates the service worker on the fly for you, and it just works. So you don't really have to go and write service workers on your own, unless and until you have a very, very advanced use case. And if you have that, come talk to me after this talk, and we can talk about that. So thinking of this, you can store 100, which we will try today. So just remember this. You just have to throw something at something, and some magic happens, right? So the closest I found was this. This is Angular. You throw something, and you have something, right? Anyways, so let's get into the hard part now, which is obviously trying to start to show you something. It's going to be very difficult, as I said, because I didn't plan for this at all. I thought there will be something here so you can see. But anyways, we can try. So going back here, let's go to this guy. Okay, let's actually do this. Be very difficult. Where is my, okay, here it is. So I'll actually move this guy over here, which is WebStorm. You guys might know this. Okay, how many of you use WebStorm? Okay, others who don't use it, that's fine. We're not going to do anything special here. Alrighty, so first off, what you need to do is open your terminal and do npm, ng new, and then the name of your app, right, whatever app it is. And then for now, up to Angular 5, you just have to do a -- service worker, and then you can also pass in -- routing, right? This is scaffolds an app, you guys know that. That -- service worker is very important. I've already done that for you, just to save some time. So let's examine what that does for you and what it actually gives you, right? So let's start with going directly into the Angular CLI JSON. I hope this is visible to all of you. If it's not, please let me know. People in the back, is it good? Awesome. All right, so yeah, let's do this. So this is the Angular CLI JSON file, which I hope you're already familiar with. And you get this service worker -true flag out of the box. This flag tells Angular to generate service worker at build time. And let's go to the app module and see if we have something. oh, not this one. Alrighty, so here you see something, Serviceworker module, and then it's saying to register something. This is a file which actually is not present in your application in development mode, and it won't be. So this is basically the magic, the dynamic file that gets created by Angular, depending on what config you pass to it. And then you can say enable environment production, which actually means if you only pass the ng build -- prod, which we will do today, only then it will go ahead and register the Serviceworker for you. Alrighty. Sorry? Okay, so let me show you. So the command was, I actually ran in the morning, 5 a.m. So ng new your app and then --serviceworker and then -- routing. This is what I ran. Okay, so English 6 is just around the corner, and this -- serviceworker might not work and might go away because you will have something called, so you'll still do something like this, ng new app, and then you'll go ahead and say ng add PWA. This will be exactly the same as -- serviceworker. The -- serviceworker also has issues. The new one also has issues. So just try the -- serviceworker one for now. Alrighty. So yeah, let's go ahead and run this app. In fact, I am already running this app, and now I will try to switch to browser. Oh, not this one. Let's get rid of this guy, and let's see if we can, Alright, so this is our app for today. It's not a Hacker News app or something. It's just a very simple app. By the way, this is kind of a clone of, if you guys, are you guys using are you guys familiar with this app called ConSnap? So we did this app for ng-conf. This is just like all the talks, and you can go to any of the talks and click on it, and you get the details, all the vlogs, links, whatever being posted by the presenter. So think of this app where you actually have two kinds of data. One is very static data. It never changes, right? This is just the fixed talks, number of talks. When you click on it, these change over time as the presenters share something. We keep on adding it to this one, right? So these are the two kind of data in a wrap, right? So that was just a quick introduction to what we are planning to do. So this is our app. We have a very ugly drop down, latest, smallest, longest. These are the talks. You can click on any one of the talks. So serious PWA keynote from Shirez, right? So this is all what it is for now. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to use something called Lighthouse. Are you guys familiar with Lighthouse? Can I skip the slides? No, I cannot. Okay. So Lighthouse is basically a plugin which helps you audit a PWA app. This is built by Google. And what you do is on your app, you can actually go into the dev tools, go to audit, perform audit, and then you can select progressive web apps, performance, and others. So it actually helps you. It actually gives you a lot of tooling behind how you should audit your apps. So Lighthouse is open source, by the way. You have automated tools for it. You can actually put it inside your CLI, and you can also run it through terminal, but we are going to do it on the browser. So when you hit the run audit button, I know guys, this is going to take some time. All right, so when you run it, you see something like this. I've already done it for you because this takes some time, right? So with the Angular CLI application without a real PWA support, since you haven't done anything yet, you typically get about 30% or less PWA compatibility, and these are the things that it's saying. It's saying you don't have a service worker, you're not running over HTTPS, and you have other problems, right? So now the first thing that we are going to do is, all right, let's close this guy, and let's say we need a manifest file. So we'll just go ahead and say manifest, the JSON file. Yes, all right, so this is our manifest file. It's going to be super duper difficult. Anyways, so this is the first step. You start with a manifest file. And this will just be a simple JSON file, and there are a few properties that you have to type. The first thing a PWA needs is a name and a short name for your application. So you'll just go ahead and say ng-conf PWA. The name can be longer, whatever. And then the start URL is basically the base URL, which is just the app context of your application, right? The next properties that you're going to do is themes and backgrounds. So you remember you saw this splash screen. These properties help you actually create that splash screen on the fly. So if you run a PWA on a browser in a desktop, you'll actually have to do some extra stuff to build a splash screen, which we'll try to do. But if you run the exact same app on a browser on a mobile phone, these properties, you don't have to do anything. These properties will automatically create that splash screen for you on the fly. All right. So a few other properties we're going to look at are display. So I'll say stand alone. There are other ones that are, I don't exactly remember the names. So the display property actually defines the developer's preference for the display mode of your web application. Orientation can be, so let's say I just want to support my application in portrait mode. Again, it's trying to take all the characteristics from a mobile app, so you have to define all these properties. Alrighty, next, what we're going to do is define icons. Icons are very important, and the bare minimum that you have to do is a 5x12 by 5x12 icon. I already have these icons. I'll just go ahead and copy paste them over to the icons folder. You actually should have an array of icons defined in here, and the magic that browsers do will they actually pick up the right icon for the right device, like depending on the mobile device you access your PWA from. So I'll just go ahead and do all the combinations, just the magic, but you guys get the idea, right? Each icon object has source, where it lives, the size, and then the type. It needs to be PNG as far as I know. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and, so we are actually kind of done with our manifest file. So this is how it looks. It has all these properties. These are the bare minimum, by the way. We have other very important properties, but we're going to skip that for now because this is the bare minimum, and you only do bare minimum in a 20-minute talk. So, alrighty, so let's go ahead and create a directory. And the name of the directory is, so we'll have images, and then we will have icons. Oh, it already exists? Hold on, so, can you guys see? Oh, okay. Oh, all right, already copied, awesome. You see all the magic that happens? That's cool. Yeah, this is not part of PWA, just a heads up. Alrighty, so this is actually, technically, this is where it's going to be. Alrighty, so we did all of this. Let's move and do something more. So the next thing we're going to do is go back to the Angular CLI and register our manifest. So you go to the assets folder, and then you add your manifest file in here. Manifest.json. Alrighty, that's all what you have to do in here. So that's it for like the first part of the process. You generate your icons through app manifest generator, or there are dozens of them online. So you generate all your icons, and then you create a manifest file, and then you register it in your Angular CLI application. That's it for the very first part. So next we need to build a service worker. So technically at this point, if you're not using Angular's Serviceworker module, you will have to go ahead and write your own Serviceworker manually and then register it and hold the promise and try to see if Serviceworker is supported in that browser or not. We already saw some of the code, right? So let's go ahead and do this. Let's open the magic file, ng-conf.json. So you get this file out of, you get this file on the fly when you do a -- serviceworker flag. And this will also be present when you will do ng-add PWA with Angular 6+. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and discuss this file real quick and see what it gives us. So starting off with, so it actually defines the base of your application from where your application starts. This is the index file. And then you have asset groups. You actually have two kinds of groups. You have asset groups and data groups. Asset groups are defined by default with Angular. And why they don't define data groups, we will see in a sec. Alrighty, so let's look at the first asset group. What is this telling? So the apps data group is configured with install mode prefetch, which translates to, hey, service worker, go ahead and cache these assets right away. These are the essentials, like these are essentially going to be all the files you need to run your application offline. So notice that it also includes all the files that are known at build time, like index.html. In fact, I should go and open this one. So it includes index.html, favicon, and then the version files. So all your chunk files and bundles, this is technically your whole application code, right? So you pass it there, and a Serviceworker will go ahead and cache it for you. The install mode prefetch, which actually means like you just have to take it from the cache. There are other important properties, which I will skip for now. The next asset group is named assets, with install mode lazy. What this actually means is, hey, Serviceworker, go ahead and cache these assets only when the assets are actually requested by the apps. So everything in the assets folder is actually lazy cached, right? Like, for example, your icons, your images, if you are actually fetching an image or a font file, things of that nature. All of them will actually go into this one. I'll go ahead and try to add some files, right? Okay, so and now at this point, with both these asset groups, our worker knows how to cache assets that are known at build time. But we can actually argue that this is not the only data, right, that we would like to cache. So what about data that's coming from APIs, right? So to cache API responses, you need to provide something called data groups, which I was talking about earlier. So let's see, where's my magic command for this one? Oh, data groups, awesome. So we'll actually define two kind of data groups because we have two kind of APIs, if you remember the app that I showed earlier, right? So we had a list page which had some data which won't really refresh. We had a drop down, and the drop down is also like populated with some APIs. That also doesn't really change very often. But on the other side, when you go to the details page, the data actually changes very often, right? And it can update. So think about your application, not this scenario, any scenario where you actually need some data to be updated on the fly every single time. You use the freshness strategy, which I will show right now. But if your data stays there, it doesn't really change a lot, and you can just cache it for like some hours or some days even. You can actually use another strategy called the performance strategy. So we'll just go ahead and again use our magic commands. Okay, so I will go ahead and say, oh, on this one. Here we go. So I named it network first. You can name it whatever you like. You have to pass in a cache config. The max size will be the max size of your request. Max age would be how long would you like a service worker to cache this data, and then goes to the network to make the call. So I'll just go ahead and say just do 10 seconds. In fact, not do 10 seconds, just 1 hour, and then timeout will be 10 seconds. So timeout actually says, so it will always make a call to the network because it is strategy freshness. But then if the call times out in 10 seconds, it'll actually go ahead and take it from the cache. That's what the timeout timeout means. So in the URLs, I will define the URLs. I will say API/docs. So this is basically the API which gives me a list of all the docs, right? Next, we will define another data group, which will be strategy. Oh, I actually have to define an object and then do this, right? So cache first strategy, you can again name it whatever you like. The strategy is performance. Again, you give it some size, max age, let's say 20 hours, and then timeout, again, you can say whatever, right? Oh, not this. Oh, yeah, I didn't expect this thing because we are like not even half in the talk, like not even 50% in the talk, because I was expecting something here. I have to like, it's very difficult. Yeah. Okay, yeah, we'll see. Give me like a few minutes, right? Because this is like, we haven't done really anything. So, few minutes. Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Alrighty, so yeah. We have to do like a bunch of stuff. So, in fact, So this is such an amazing stage right here. So let's do this. Let's open a different app, actually, in which I've already done all of this. So I'll exit the presentation mode and try to open the most recent one, this one. Alrighty. A new window. I hope this opens up. Yeah, so I'll just show all the stuff that I had to do eventually, but unfortunately I didn't know this setup. Alrighty, so once you're done with your thing, you'll actually go to the index file, and you will actually add a bunch of these meta tags that you have to add, which actually, so this theme color should actually match the theme color we defined in manifest file, and then you actually go ahead and register your manifest file here. For the splash screen, what I did is, you just like create a div splash, and what I'm doing in the styles is, if the app root where your Angular application will lie, if that is empty, just show the splash, otherwise don't show the splash screen. Another PWA requirement is you have to provide a no-script tag. So PWA specs actually check if there is, if you actually handle a scenario where your browser does not support JavaScript. So these are some of the basics. I'll just go ahead. One last thing that I want to do is, unfortunately, since we are already ran out of time, I'll just go ahead and show you a audit, simple audit, and that's it for now. How do I? This is the grabbiest experience. Alrighty, so I'll just say Firebase, and do you guys see? No, not this one. I have a link. Just a sec. Bookmark. Where are bookmarks? Okay, bookmark. And then here is something that's online. So this is basically a progressive web app. I did all this stuff that I told you. I'll just go ahead and run the audit for you. So this is hosted on Firebase. You need to have a server which actually redirects every HTTP request to HTTPS. This is one of the requirements if you see here, right? So that's why I had to do it. You can also create a node server which actually routes all your HTTP requests to HTTPS, and here you go. Sorry about all of this, but this is what you'll get eventually when you do all of that steps. Thank you so very much.